Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Salim Akhtar Malik, your host at the Observation Post channel. On this channel, I discuss issues of national and international importance, defense and security matters, as well as important events from military history. You can interact with me on this channel by giving your views and comments, which I hold very important because these help me in fine tuning my talks, which I deliver from time to time on this channel. You can also connect with me on Twitter, where my address is at Salim Akhtar 53. So it is a forum, it is not just a channel, it is a forum for discussion for mutual enrichment of views and information. All the videos are uploaded and released simultaneously on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. In this session, I'll be talking about the recent surge of Indian forces in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this surge is being reported by the Indian press that fresh troops are being inducted and redeployments are taking place in the state, which is reminiscent to what had happened in the state almost 2 years ago, that is, to be more precise, on 5th August 2019, when India annulled Articles 370 and 35A of its constitution, which ended and which finished the special status, at least the cosmetic special status which the Indians had accorded, or the Indian government had accorded to the Kashmiris since 1947. So it was a move in which they annulled or abrogated Article 370 and 35A, which provided a special status to the Kashmiris living in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, prevented the Indians living elsewhere inside India from getting domicile of the Indian held Kashmir, and prevented the Indians again from the other states of the Indian Union from buying property in India. So they could not gain the citizenship, as well as were prohibited from buying property. But this ended on August 5, 2019. And in the second step, the Indian government trifurcated the state, the Indian held state, into three union territories. The Constituent Assembly, or the Legislative Assembly of the Indian held state, was dissolved, and three union territories were created, and these territories are Jammu, the Kashmir Valley, and the Ladakh region. So it was a move which was highly criticized and came under a lot of discussion and criticism from various quarters. But the move was secondly summed up by Jaishankar, Indian foreign minister, when he visited Beijing soon after the annulment of Article 370 and 35A and the Trifurcation of State. So he had gone there. Jai Shankar had gone to Beijing to explain to the Chinese, who were quite angry with the Indian move, particularly in case of Ladakh. And he said, I quote him, he said, the trifurcation is nothing but redrawing of lines on the maps. So, was it just a redrawing of lines? In any case, it was an administrative action which created three administrative units, which in any case were there in some other form. So, the valley administration was there. Jammu had its separate identity and its administration, and Ladakh also had a separate administration. So nothing much was done except, as said by or remarked by Jai Shankar, it was a move or it was an action to redraw the lines on the maps. Now, what is the recent surge about? No, before discussing the recent surge of Indian troops, which is taking place in anticipation of another big action in the state, let us discuss what were the aims and objectives of trifurcation. The aims and objectives of trifurcation, as discussed in the independent quarters or in the neutral quarters, were number one, it was aimed at fragmenting the cohesiveness of Indian held Kashmir or Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And by trifurcating the state, which was already ethnically divided into three regions, probably Modi had aimed at weakening the resolve of the Kashmiris to unite for a common cause. Now, if you look back historically, the freedom movement or the liberation movement from the Indian yoke was being carried out in Kashmir Valley only, because Jammu is a predominantly Hindu region, whereas Ladakh region is sparsely populated. It has not more than 2 lakh inhabitants, and the demographic balance is 50-50. That is, there are almost 47% Muslims, 50% Buddhists, and 2% Hindus and other religions, those who follow other religions. So, why were they fragmenting the state, and why had they abrogated Article 370 and Article 35A, which prohibited the Indians from gaining the domicile of the Jammu and Kashmir state? It was to change the demography. They wanted to change the demography, and there are speculations now that probably they want to change the demography to the extent that the Hindus become in majority in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in the valley, and thereafter, say after 10 years, they would hold a plebiscite. They would say, okay, we will honor the United Nations resolutions and we'll hold a plebiscite, and let us hold a plebiscite, and thereafter the results will be there, in which the Hindu majority by then would vote in favor of India, and thereafter they will say that the matter is resolved. So the line of control is the international boundary between the two countries. So you take Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and we have the valley as well as the rest of the Kashmir. This is their plan. How how practical it is, we will discuss it later. But then, what are they up to now? What is their aim by inducting fresh troops into the valley? It is being speculated that they want to create, through salami slicing, new administrative units. And when I say to create new administrative units, they have in mind integrating or annexing South Kashmir, that is the Poonch district, with Jammu, and create a larger Jammu division. Now, Jammu has already Hindu majority, whereas Poonch is predominantly Muslim. And mind you, all the clashes and the skirmishes which had been taking place between the Indian forces and the Kashmiris, most of them had taken place in the Poonch district. So it is in the eye of the storm. I don't know what they want to do by creating another administrative unit by amalgamating Poonch with Jammu, but this is what is being speculated. Now I'll give you an analysis of the Indian intentions and its aims and objectives. The first is the fragmentation. They want to fragment the cohesiveness of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir so as to prevent, according to their philosophy and according to their thinking, they want to prevent the Kashmiris from united for a common cause. But then, as I said, the freedom struggle or the freedom movement is going on solely in the Kashmir Valley. Ladakh and Jammu regions have nothing to do with the violence which is going on when the Kashmiris agitate for independence. So that is mainly and predominantly a movement for independence which is being waged by the Kashmiris of the Kashmir Valley. In doing so, probably the Indians have been influenced by the Israelis, who for the last half a century are using and employing the same tactics to fragment the Palestinians from the west bank of River Jordan. What they have done is that they have created new realities by constructing Jewish settlements which surround the existing Palestinian towns and villages. And in doing so, they have tried to isolate the Palestinian population centers. And the purpose is to force the Palestinians living in the west bank of River Jordan to either leave Palestine altogether and find refuge in one of the Arab countries in the neighborhood of Israel, or to force them to flee to the Gaza Strip, which is a 300 square kilometer strip like a sardine can, where almost 2 million Palestinians have been squeezed. So this region, that is the Gaza region, has an area of just 300 square kilometers. There are 3 million more Palestinians living in the West Bank of River Jordan. The actual statistics says that there are much more than 3 million, but this is what the Israeli statistics say. They say that there are 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank of River Jordan. If they squeeze them also into the Gaza Strip, it would be an area where 5 million Palestinians would be forced to live. There is no water. The so-called Palestine National Authority, which was formed after the Oslo Agreement, is a non-state. It does not have its own airspace. It does not have the jurisdiction over its own airspace, and it does not have a maritime boundary. The maritime boundaries are controlled by the Israelis. So, but then it is a very small area, and still Israelis have not been able to force the Palestinians to flee from that area even after half a century, after forcing them to do so for almost half a century. The West Bank of River Jordan has an area of approximately 2,500 kilometers, which is almost equal to the area of the Chekwal district of Rawalpindi division. And the population of the Indian held Kashmir is more than 1 crore. That is, it has an area and a population which is more than the area is more than the or larger than the area of Pakistani and Indian Punjab combined, whereas, as I said, it is a population of more than 1 crore. According to the 2011 census, the population of Indian illegally occupied Kashmir is 1.2 crore. That is 1 crore 2 lakhs. Now, talking about the changing of demographic characteristic of Jammu and Kashmir, they only need to change the demography of Kashmir Valley, because in Jammu region, the Hindus are already in majority, whereas, as I said, Ladakh is a very sparsely populated region where the demographic balance between the Buddhists and Muslims is almost 50-50, and there are 2% Hindus and other followers of other religions. So they have to change the demography of the Kashmir Valley, where Muslims are 97% according to the 2011 statistics, and Hindus are 1.84%, whereas Sikhs are 0.88%. So Hindus and Sikhs, as well as the followers of other religions, are almost 2 lakhs, whereas there are 53 lakh, that is 5.3 million Muslims living in the valley. So changing demography of Kashmir Valley is not a joke. Yes, it can be done. It could have been done had Stalin been in power, whereas the clone of Stalin in the form of Modi is there, but it was only Stalin who could transport entire populations from one part of the erstwhile Soviet Union to another. But then the erstwhile Soviet Union had that much space. It had Siberia, it had Kazakhstan, etc., which were almost uninhabited. Whereas India is a highly or a densely populated country. Where would they expel those 53 lakh Muslims from Kashmir Valley, and how would they induct that many Hindus into the valley? It is not possible. It is simply not possible. And changing the demography of Kashmir Valley is a pipe dream. It will remain a pipe dream. Now, there are rumors that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are also interested in getting some sort of a solution for the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, where the ostensibly where the line of control becomes the international border between India and Pakistan. And this is why they say that there are friendly statements by the Indian chief of army staff, etc., and some sort of backtrack diplomacy is going on. But then this is not going to happen. Saudi Arabia is an artificial state. It was formed after the First World War or as a result of the First World War, and the boundaries of the present Middle East were drawn by France and England. So it is uh, itself an artificial state. As for UAE, it was formed again in December 1971 when the British left this region, the Gulf region. So both these states are themselves standing on slippery ground. How can they influence a country like Pakistan to agree to discard its almost 7 decades long understanding on Jammu and Kashmir and its issue or its stand on Jammu and Kashmir? It is not possible. So, what is the way forward? If Indians had it in their power, they would have occupied Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. And if it had been in Pakistan's power, it would have liberated the Kashmiris from the Indian yoke. But both these countries lack the conventional punch to do so. Hence, they will keep resorting to indirect measures for the fruition of their strategic objectives. In case of Kashmiris, they are fighting for their liberation, and according to the international law, they are allowed to wage an armed struggle against the Indian occupation forces. So this will go on despite salami slicing and more fragmentation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmir will continue to bleed. Indians will never be able to change its demography, and Pakistan army will be there standing along the or deployed along the line of control to provide a strategic defensive balance to the Kashmiris. This is all I wanted to discuss with you in this session. See you in the next session with a new topic. Till then, bye bye.